This is Richard West from Threshold and Oblivion Protocol, and you're listening to the FANTASM Podcast.
Phantasm.
Maximum terror.
Oh, that's your target audience, baby!
Phantasm.
And you know something? I sort of enjoyed it.
Phantasm.
Sell the metal! Sell the metal! Sell the metal! Sell the metal!
Phantasm.
Hey, this is Dr. Vincent West, medical doctor with the FANTASM Podcast. I am super excited today to be speaking with Richard from Oblivion Protocol. I'm a huge fan of the band Threshold. They're an incredible band. Check out their whole catalog. They're amazing. And Oblivion Protocol is Richard's new project. It's The Fall of Shires is the name of the new album, and it comes out August 18th. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm a huge fan.
It's my pleasure. Very nice to meet you.
So, real quick, for my audience, or our audience here at Phantasm, can you talk about how you originally became the keyboardist for Threshold?
Wow, that's going back a bit. That was 30 years ago. I was just a session player, really. I was out doing a tour with a band called Shadowland, that was this British progressive rock band.
Right.
And I'd been asked to spin and play keyboards on the tour because the keyboard player was also the singer, so he wanted to be the front man. So I went along and did the tour, and the guitarist in the band was a young gentleman called Carl Groom. And while we were on the tour, he just had a chat with me one day over dinner, and he said he had another band called Threshold, and would I like to come into the studio and play a few keyboards on it? So at that moment, they'd already signed a deal, they'd recorded the album. Carl had actually played most of the keyboards himself, but he wanted a few kind of moments and solos and extra bits. So I thought it was like a 3-day session player job. So I went into the studio, took a bit longer than 3 days, went in there for a couple of weeks, I think, put down all the keyboards, and that was the end of it for me. I thought I could go back to my normal life. I was trying to be a pop writer actually at the time. Funnily enough, working for Simon Cowell, who you may well have heard of, but that was before Simon was famous. That project came to nothing, and then before I knew it, Threshold had called me up and said, can you have your photo on the album, and can we put your name on there, and then we're thinking of going on tour. So kind of without realising it, I appeared to have joined a progressive metal band, which was quite a surprise. So there wasn't the day when I actually joined, it just sort of happened, and so I've been there ever since, 30 years on. Very, very glad with how everything worked out.
The band is so incredible. I was listening to some of your all's. I'm such a huge fan of the catalog of the band. We'll get to this amazing record, but I just want to tell everybody I cannot stress how important to me Threshold's music is as a fan of progressive music. And I still feel like you guys are overshadowed. I have no idea why, but I think you're all one of the best at what you do. And I have to correct people all the time that I know that are really into what they claim to be progressive stuff. And I'm like, you should check out Threshold because they're really good. You guys are like Britain's best kept secret. Like I cannot stress to you enough how important I think the band is, and I can't thank you for all the years of amazing music.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I hope we're not so much for secret as we were. We've had that strapline for so long. I kind of hope we're a bit better known than we used to be. But it's one of those weird things, some bands just get this trajectory that takes them straight to the top, and others have a more of a winding path. For some reason, never really sure why, we were one of those winding path bands, but it's been a fantastic journey, and I've got no regrets.
Incredible stuff. Let's talk about Oblivion Protocol. What an amazing release this is. So for the Fall of Shires, when did you start, writing material for this amazing record?
Well, I guess it goes back to... So the album itself is a sequel to Threshold's Legends of the Shires, which we released in 2017. And while we were on tour promoting that record, I think it was 2018, I came up with this idea for a sequel called The Fall of the Shires, and I wrote the opening song, The Full Part 1. And just had this storyline, which, to be honest, I thought was a bit dark at the time. I thought, goodness, I can't make that. It's about this guy who becomes the king, and then he decides he has to kill off some of the population because the country's too full. And I thought, yeah, that's a bit dark for Threshold, but I kind of kept it in my book. And when it came to making the new Threshold record, which became Dividing Lines, we actually started off, it was going to be the Fall of the Shires. We kind of decided to go with it. I kind of got used to the story, I think, by then. So for a few months, that was it, and that was going to be the Threshold record. And a couple of the guys just said, well, actually, it feels a bit constraining. We want a bit more freedom in the writing, don't want to have to write to the story. So I thought, yeah, okay, that's fine. You know, when you're in a band, you kind of find a direction that you're all happy to go in. So if this isn't it, then that's cool.
Right.
So the album became Dividing Lines. But it left me with these songs. I had the full part 1 and the full part 2 by then, which are kind of the bookends of the album. They introduce the story and then give the conclusion. So we didn't do them on the Threshold record because it didn't really make any sense outside of the story. So I had them, and I had the actual storyline. I thought, well, it felt like unfinished business. You know, I thought, I want to finish this. I really feel invested in it. So I thought, well, I'll just make it for myself. So I just did it for fun. I made it in my studio. I sung everything, played everything. And it was really supposed to be one of those private projects that just sits on your shelf and you have a bit of fun listening to it every now and again. But as things go, you know, things don't never work out quite the way you think. And I was chatting to a friend at a record company one day, and he asked me what I was working on. So I told him, and then next thing I knew, he's decided he wants to sign me. So what was supposed to be a completely private project became anything but. But I couldn't be happier. It came out really well, and can't wait to see how it goes down. It comes out next month.
It's incredible. Let's jump around on this record. Are there some standout tracks for you? Obviously, The Fall Part 1 and then The Fall Part 2 close the record out, but the stuff in between, some really great tracks.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I know there's only 8 songs on the album, I kind of made it to fit perfectly on one piece of vinyl. That was my initial constraint I gave myself, because I kind of thought maybe I'll just press up one copy for myself one day and it'll be my own private project. So there's only 8 songs, and we ended up with a short list of 5 to be singles, which was kind of encouraging. So the label were obviously quite happy with what we'd done. Standouts, I guess, to be the singles. I mean, we've got This Is Not a Test is probably my favourite one on there. It's kind of got classical slight flavour to it, but kind of typical progressive metal at the same time, and became the one that we picked for the video. So that was the moment where I had to step out from behind the keyboards where I'd been for the last 30 years and become the front man.
Right.
So that was quite a special moment for me. It's funny, actually. I was kind of nervous, as you can imagine, and actually when I did it, it just felt like the most natural thing ever. So now I'm feeling in that super confident mode where I think, yeah, let's go and do some shows. So I hope I don't live to regret that decision, but I'm looking forward to taking the thing on the road as well. It should be fun.
Was it hard surrounding yourself with musicians to make this great record?
It was kind of beautiful, actually. So, as I said, I'd already made the record myself, so I kind of knew how it sounded. But when I got signed, I thought, well, I better have a band then. I can't just be me, you know, that's not going to work. So I drew out my wish list of my 3 favourite musicians who are all good friends of mine. And I thought it would be amazing if you know, 1 or 2 of them said yes. And all 3 of them said yes. So I just had one of those kind of I've won the lottery moments where my favourite 3 guys were all on the record. So I've got Hoot Jolly from Within Temptation, the big Dutch band. I got Devin Townsend, his drummer Darby Todd, who's currently out on tour with Dream Theater. I don't know if you've seen them touring around the States at the moment.
Oh, I didn't know he was touring with Dream Theater.
He's touring with Devin Townsend.
Oh, cool. He's there. Oh, right. Devin's drummer. Cool, yeah.
He's their drummer. And it's kind of cool. I've been seeing some clips on Facebook. He's been posting them up every day. And at the end of the night, they all get on stage together and do The Spirit Carries On. And so they're all kind of swapping places, and they'll be stepping up and doing drums. And it's just really cool to watch. I kind of wish I could have seen the tour, to be honest. So yeah, amazing drummer. Really can't believe I've got him in my band. And then there's a bassist called Simon Anderson from a Swedish band called Darkwater, who's just phenomenal. I thought I'd written all these great bass lines for the record, and then he kind of comes back with what he thinks. I was just blown away. I thought, how do you even do that? He's just amazing. It's so musical. So there's just some moments on the record I'm just in awe of what he's done. It's just so much talent and so much, you know, you can kind of show off on an instrument and it just doesn't fit. and sometimes you can just play just amazingly and it fits beautifully, and that's what he's done. So it's just become what was a dream project for me as a kind of a private thing has become a dream project with great musicians interpreting my work in such a beautiful way. So I am probably the happiest man on the planet right now.
Let me ask you, so, and this kind of weaves in and out of the record and then also with Threshold, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, as far as like progressive music, I think it's very interesting to me because I have a lot of friends that say that they're into that, but the stuff that they're listening to is not really my flavor. Whereas I could say Threshold is definitely my flavor. Like, I really prefer early Dream Theater. I don't really understand what they're doing now. Like, I'm a big Mike Portnoy guy, so like when he left, I kind of left with him. Not and continued to follow his music stuff necessarily, but I just preferred him in the band. With you guys, you never missed a beat with Threshold. Like, Johan coming in, my God, he's unreal. I love him. Is it... And I know a lot of people are really big fans of, like, Steve Wilson and stuff. Again, not really my cup of tea. Very talented guy, just not really my type of progressive rock. Have you ever noticed that kind of dividing line with people that are into, like, progressive music, where it seems like there's people that are attracted to, like, a certain type, and then, you know, the top that I mean, you even do it with Oblivion Protocol, but with Threshold, you guys are so specific. I was just curious what your thoughts are on that, because it seems like there's, for such a vast, you know, going all the way back to Rush or Genesis or Yes or any of the great bands, it seems like it's just a divided listening community. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, it's a really weird one. I mean, I fall in the same camp as you. I think it's funny because when I joined Threshold, they kind of had a sound. If you heard the first album when you land, it wasn't really how we sound today, but it kind of had all the elements, you know, the heavy riffing all the way through. By the second album, we were kind of going for the big chorus with multi vocals, so we kind of sort of worked out what our sound was going to be. But I don't really know where it came from. I think, you know, Carl and Nick, who were the guitarists at the time, just loved doing this dual riffing together, and it just sounded so immense. I remember going to the first rehearsal, just being blown away by this huge wall of sound. It was just the most powerful thing I'd ever heard. So they kind of had that template, but then they had John on bass, who was more into his prog. He was into his Pink Floyd and his Rush, and you know, he brought in those influences. And I think the idea of what Threshold was just to combine those two things. They weren't, you know, we didn't know Dream Theater. I think they were kind of developing at the same time as us. So it was really just no attempt to be commercial whatsoever. Just bring your favourite influences to the room and put them together and see how it works.
Right.
And that kind of set the template for what Threshold was earlier on. So when I came in, I could see what they were doing. And whereas my progressive influences were different again, I was kind of Queen, Genesis, Floyd were my big three bands. So it kind of probably the poppier end of prog, if you like, you know, the guys who were getting in the charts. And I kind of brought that side to the table, I suppose. And I think ever since then, when we get back together, we know what a Threshold record is. It's kind of this undefined thing, but we know what we're doing. And so, although we've evolved over the years, we've never strayed too much from that sound, because it's just this kind of unique British thing that we did that took an awfully long time to catch on, but it finally did. And it's one of those. It's funny as a writer, because when you've got that sort of palette to write to, you can go into the big heavy stuff, you can go into the massive power stuff, you can go into fast widdly solos, you can go into these lovely emotive musical sections, you can go into strange time signatures. It's such a wide palette. It's just a beautiful place to go back to. So when I did Oblivion Protocol, I kind of took the same sort of concept. I changed it a bit. I didn't want it as heavy, it wouldn't have suited my voice, so I changed a few elements of it, but I kind of kept that wide palette because it's just such a beautiful place to be.
This record is absolutely incredible. Was pre-production and the mix and everything, was it difficult to go through as opposed to doing stuff like for Threshold?
No, because I was doing it for myself. I had this total freedom. I thought I'm just having fun. I genuinely thought no one would hear it. You know, I knew Farah and my wife would hear it, but that was it. That was the entire audience. So I didn't have any pressures on me, no stresses. I just had fun, and the demos I made were pretty full on. They sounded like the finished record pretty much. So it was just a blast from start to finish, and I was so pleased with how it came together. It's one of those projects you do a bit more on it every day, and you're jumping up and down at the end of the night because you're so pleased with how it's going. All you want to do is get up the next morning and listen to what you did last night. It was one of those moments. And then when I got the guys in, like I say, they just took what I'd written and added to it and made it. They brought their personality and character to it, which is beautiful. So it feels like my record, but with their interpretation on it. So and now I love listening to it for new reasons because I get to enjoy what they've done on it.
As far as, are you all planning to do some shows for Oblivion Protocol?
I hope so. Yeah, it's early days. The record comes out next month. We'll see how well it goes down and whether there's an appetite to see us live. But I've been standing behind the keyboards for 30 years, so I'm kind of interested to see what it's like to come out to the front of the stage and stand behind the microphone. So I feel strangely compelled to try it out. So I hope we will, yes.
It's your Phil Collins moment.
Absolutely, yes.
It's incredible.
I won't be putting on comedy Cockney accents that he used to do in the 80s. So.
As far as... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but I'll bring my own spin to it. But yeah, like I say, really hope we'll do it, and I hope I'll get over to the States and do some shows too. But I can't predict the future, unfortunately. We'll have to see how it goes.
Absolutely. What about this amazing artwork for this record?
Yeah, really pleased with that. So we had this artist, Thomas Eberhardt, this German artist that's done loads of work for Threshold in the past. And then for some reason, we stopped using him. We just kind of explored different ideas. So when I thought, well, this is kind of going to be a Threshold side project, who better to do the cover than my favourite Threshold artist? And he did our classic covers, if you know them, for albums like Subsurface and Hypothetical.
Absolutely.
Some beautiful pieces of progressive art. I'd put them on my wall. They just look so cool. So he was the top guy on my list. So I said, can you reinterpret the Legends of the Shires album cover just in the way that it's now fallen? So he's kind of, you can see the colours are a lot more or less vibrant. He's depicted the idea of the fall of the Shire as it is very nicely, I think. And yeah, beautiful piece of artwork. Very pleased with it. So when I do the sequel, which I hope I will, I'll be going back to him again.
It's incredible. It's just beautiful art. And then just to let our listeners know, so Threshold's going to be doing some shows this summer?
Yeah, so we did a tour back in the spring of Europe, and now the summer it's just festival season now, so we're going to various countries all over Europe. Sadly not the States at the moment, but we're off to Poland this weekend. We were in Italy last weekend. It's just great, really nice, because with COVID obviously we'll stop touring for a couple of years, and you're never really sure whether it's going to come back. We had the added pressure of Brexit, where we decided to leave the EU, so it makes travelling around a lot more difficult, a lot more red tape and paperwork. So we just didn't really know if touring was ever going to come back again. So it's been such a nice surprise to find that it is. So we're looking at opportunities to come back to the States at some point as well. So I hope that'll happen sometime next year.
That'd be incredible. As far as if you guys play live like Oblivion Protocol, you think you'll throw some Threshold stuff in there, or anything maybe the other guys from their bands maybe, or is it just gonna stick with just the record?
Well, that's the tricky thing, you see. It's only a single album. It's about 44 minutes long, which isn't really long enough for a live set, is it? I think even at a festival it'd be a struggle. So I have been thinking, there's a couple of Threshold songs that we've never played live. I thought, well, I could claim them as mine then, couldn't I? So you're thinking the same way as me, but I don't know yet. We'll have to see what happens.
Absolutely incredible. And then as far as I've got to ask you, and I'm sorry I've asked so many Threshold things, but I've got to ask you a few just because I'm so excited to speak with you for the first time. Is it hard at this point making a set list?
For Threshold?
Yes.
Absolutely impossible, yeah. The new album, Dividing Lines, we just wanted to play all 10 songs. We couldn't see a weak one that we didn't want to play without happy with the record. And so we picked 7. And straight away the fans are saying, where are the other 3? So you just can't win. So we did, mostly stuff from the new album. We did quite a lot from Legend of the Shires, because that's the most recent oldie. And then there just wasn't room to do all the old ones. So what we decided to do is go back out again next year and go back with a more oldie based set. We're going to try and pick something from every album, just so we get a chance to at least revisit the back catalogue again. But yeah, we're 12 albums in. That's a huge amount of music.
Absolutely.
It would be great to play all our favourite songs every time, but yeah, with every album we do, the more difficult it gets.
Incredible. And one last thing, if it's cool, if you don't mind talking about it. If not, I can edit it out completely. But obviously, I was a huge fan of Mac. Do you have a fun story about Mac you could share with me today?
The first one that comes to mind. So anyone that knows Mac and saw him knows that he was a bit of a drinker. And we were doing this festival once in Holland, and he was quite drunk. And he was on stage, and the show wasn't going particularly well. I think he felt he needed to do something to lift it. And there was one of those massive lighting gantries over the front of the stage. So he decided he was going to climb it. So he starts climbing up the vertical frame, which is fairly easy because it's a bit like scaffolding. And then he got to the top, and he started climbing horizontally across the crossbar, which was about 4 or 5 meters above the stage. And at that point, we're thinking, this is ridiculous. He was hanging upside down by his hands and his feet. He's put the microphone in his back pocket, and he started shinning his way across to the middle of the stage. And he's so drunk. And we're thinking, if you fall, you're going to die. There's concrete down below you. And he got to the middle, and he got the microphone out, and he started singing. I just couldn't believe it. And then when he got down afterwards, he came up to me and he said, halfway up there, I had a moment where I just thought, I'm going to die. This is my last day. And I was absolutely petrified, and I didn't know what to do. So yeah, not a funny story, but it's just a little insight into what he was like on stage and on tour. He was quite an unpredictable character, an absolutely golden voice. There's no voice better than that. Absolutely beautiful, but quite a curious character, definitely. I do miss him. He died 12 years ago, and he was a good friend, and it's very sad. Died way too young. Absolutely,
just brilliant stuff, and thank you for sharing about that. Kids, pick up Oblivion Protocol's The Fall of Shires. It comes out Friday, August 18th on the amazing Atomic Fire Records. Go see Threshold. Listen to their catalog, buy their catalog. This band is incredible. One of my favorites. Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure today. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It means the world to me.
You're very kind. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Phantasm.
And you know something? I sort of enjoyed it.
Phantasm.